What's up, everybody? A very happy now Tuesday morning to you here on the Refuse to Lose Territory podcast. Brady Farkas with you as always. And as always, a reminder that we come out 3 times a week, every single Tuesday, every Thursday with ESPN MLB Insider Buster Olney, and every single Friday as well. It's going to be the same schedule this week, but next week you might notice some different things. The reason being, I'll be spending my weekend in Washington, D.C. with the Mariners taking on the Nationals in our nation's capital. So I will be there, and we'll be getting some great stuff from the ballpark and from the clubhouse, I'm sure, and we'll have some things to share with you next week as a result of that trip and as a result of those conversations and my takeaways in person. So the schedule will remain the same, but again, next week we'll have some different flavor. Today, we'll finish our conversation with Ryon Healy, former Mariners infielder and current Mariners broadcaster. We played about 2/3 of the conversation on Friday's episode. We'll have the remaining 1/3 here on this episode. The Mariners have beaten the Orioles 6-3 on Monday night, though it was not as comfortable as the final score would indicate. As a result, they're 35-32 on the season, and they remain in first place in the American League West. As always, we have a lot to get to, but you can also remember to follow us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on YouTube as we grow our video presence. You can also check out all of our written content at marinersroundtable.com. Myself and Taryn Kovac doing everything we can to bring you all the Mariners news that you need to know in written form, and you can join our free community as well and be part of the conversation yourself. That's all available at marinersroundtable.com. All right, without further ado, let go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
All right, look, I'll be honest. Most of my stuff today is big picture stuff. I don't really want to focus on all the minutia of the last couple of days since our last show, but I also don't want to completely gloss over everything either. So let me just run through a couple of very quick takeaways before we get to kind of the real meat and potatoes of everything, and then before we finish off with Ryon Healy. So, Mariners are 2-2 on this road trip. Right now, I've been tweeting this out after Mariners victories on this trip, both of them. I consider all wins in the Eastern time zone to be excellent. I think wins in the Eastern time zone are hard to get. I think they're hard to get for West Coast teams. I think they're historically difficult for the Mariners to get. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time complaining when the team wins on the East Coast. Furthermore, this is a 10-game road trip, 10 games in 10 days. I think all of us who are being logical about this look at this trip and say, if they go 5-5, then they've probably done their job and we should probably be satisfied. So here they are at 2-2, and they are on their way to 5-5, at least the potential of 5-5. So objectively, so far through 4 games, they have done what a lot of us, I think, reasonably hope and reasonably expect. So with that in mind, I thought Luis Castillo was very good on Sunday. Yes, he only in quotes, 5+. Yes, he threw 100 pitches, but he gave you the 5+. He left with a 4-1 lead. That's better than we could have expected. If you remember, I spent really most of May, pre-piggyback plan saying, if Luis Castillo gives you 5 and leaves with a chance for you to win, then that has to be considered a success. That is exactly what he did on Sunday. 5+ innings. He left with a 4-1 lead. That is a game that he put you in a position to win and that we all know the Mariners woulda, coulda, shoulda won. So I thought he was excellent. I think he's been mostly excellent since the piggyback situation and now into the world of the 6-man rotation. So the fastball was up to 98 miles an hour. He had a good changeup. He threw strikes. Luis Castillo showed that he still has what it takes to be a starting pitcher. So for everybody who thinks, Luis Castillo stinks, we have to put him in the bullpen, he beat back that narrative on Sunday. He had good stuff. He had starter stuff. I don't want it to get lost how excellent Randy Arozarena has been offensively for this team. I mean, we're talking about a guy with 18 steals and 18 doubles. We're talking about a guy in the top 5 of Major League Baseball in both this season. We are talking about a guy hitting .285 coming into the game on Monday. We're talking about a guy who right now is playing at an all-star level. There's been a ton of talk early about the great start from Julio. There's been a ton of talk early about where's the slug from Josh Naylor. There's been excitement about Cole Emerson. There was early excitement about Cole Young. There's been the talk about J.P. Crawford's power. There's been the talk about, when is Cal going to get going? And, Cal's hurt, and Brendan Donovan. There's been a lot of talk about a lot of guys, and there hasn't been as much talk about Randy Arozarena. I don't want it to get lost just how good he has been, because he has been excellent. He has been an all-star for what he has done offensively. That said, just because you're being an all-star offensively with the bat does not mean you are immune from mistakes. The base running the last 2 days, as I record this Sunday and Monday, has been collectively atrocious. Randy Arozarena caught stealing and or picked off on Sunday, caught stealing on Monday. Josh Naylor caught stealing on Sunday. By the way, all the talk on Sunday is about Dan Wilson's bullpen management or Cooper Criswell or Andres Munoz, and that's all fair. But the Mariners led 4-3 in the ninth inning and got Josh Naylor on, and he was caught stealing, and got Randy Arozarena on, and he was picked off. In a 4-3 game, in a one-run game, you had two hitters get on in the ninth of a one-run game, and both of them made outs on the bases. That cannot happen. That cannot happen. Moving to Monday. Obviously, a nice job by Josh Naylor with the grand slam. Obviously, a very nice job by Ryan Bliss. Welcome back, getting a sac fly. A huge double play from Bliss and Julio Rodriguez to halt a very scary rally by the Orioles late in that game. Johnny Pereda, who has really struggled on challenges with probably the most meaningful challenge of the year for the Mariners, a 3-2 pitch from Matt Brash, who was really struggling with the bases loaded to Pete Alonso, and he gets the strike three call. The Brash stuff, the Munoz stuff, the Bizzardo stuff, we're all going to get to that in a minute, but it is becoming a conversation. The Mariners bullpen has been very good this year numbers-wise, but the guys you're really counting on are all kind of having hiccups at the same time, and that is a storyline that is not going to go away, at least until they all right the ship. I don't have the energy. I spent some of Sunday fighting with people on social media or conversing with people on social media about whether or not Dan Wilson should have walked Kevin McGonigal in the ninth inning. I don't have the energy to do that here late on Monday, early into Tuesday. Andres Munoz couldn't throw strikes. I have a hard time walking Kevin McGonigal to load the bases when a guy is now then forced to throw strikes and has shown no inclination that he can do that regularly, repeatedly in that moment. So I wouldn't have walked McGonigal to load the bases and set up, a situation where Andres Munoz is forced into throwing strikes. But those of you that do, I get why you would have done it. Maybe it would have worked. Obviously, my plan here didn't work because McGonigal got a walk-off single, but that was obviously a very difficult game. No matter what your bend is on how that at-bat in the ninth inning should have been handled, it was a very difficult outcome and a very difficult loss. All right, let's get to I told you, I had first things first here. I had a handful of things on my mind that were small. I have a few more things that are big picture stuff on my mind. But first, let's have these words.
My dog Bella would do anything for a treat, and I want to give her a treat that will take care of her long term.
And a quick message from today's sponsor, the ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program. If you're frantically looking for what to do with your pup when they have an issue, the program offers customizable accident and illness plans, making it easier to get your pet the care they need. When you enroll in an ASPCA Pet Health Insurance plan, you could get a $25 Amazon gift card. It's a little treat for you while you're doing something great for your pet. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/FOUL. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/FOUL. Eligibility restrictions apply. Visit aspcapetinsurance.com/Amazon terms for more info. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independence American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance.
All right. As I said, I have big picture stuff that I want to get to here, right? I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. As I told you a moment ago, This is a difficult 10-game road trip, East Coast, 10 games in 10 days. I will never take it for granted that right now the Mariners are 2-2 when I'm asking them to get to 5-5. Again, they are doing so far what objectively I would like them to do, playing 500 on the road. That said, the 6-man rotation fears that I gave you on Friday, we are 4 games into this road trip, and every single one of them has happened. I told Buster, I told Ryon Healy, I have fears about the 6-man rotation. Now, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't know that there was really a better course of action for the Mariners than this for a handful of reasons, but this whole thing with the 6-man rotation made me nervous, and 4 games into a 10-game trip, you have seen why, because every single one of them has happened. There is a ripple effect, okay? There is a ripple effect to things, and decisions that you make one day, they pile on top of each other, and they affect what happens the next day. Let me just throw some scenarios at you from this weekend. Bryce Miller was really good through 6 innings, right? He was really, really good through 6 innings. The Mariners end the game. Matt Brash, in no particular order, Matt Brash, Jose Ferrer, and Gabe Spire, they all pitch, and the Mariners win that game 4-0. They shut out the Tigers. They win it 4-0. Ferrer, Spire, Brash, they all pitch. Fine. Now we go to Sunday. Luis Castillo, who during the piggyback threw 54, 68, and 71 pitches, right? As a piggyback starter reliever, he threw 54, 68, and 71 pitches. On Sunday as a starter, he threw 100 pitches. Why? Because the bullpen is short, and they are trying to milk every last out they can from a starting pitcher in order to conserve every last ounce of bullpen performance. So Luis Castillo throws 100 pitches when he hadn't thrown more than 71 in his last 3 outings. So I don't think it's a great idea to have Luis Castillo throw 29 more pitches on Sunday than he had been, than he had thrown over his last 3 weeks. The Mariners clearly felt they had to overextend their starter. That, I think, is a problem for multitudes of reasons. Could have been performance, could have been health, whatever, but I don't like the idea of a guy who had thrown 71 now throwing 100. So the 6-man rotation, I believe, causes you to have to overextend Luis Castillo, which I don't love. Then Luis Castillo has to come out after 5 2/3 innings. As a result, Jose Ferrer, who pitched the day before, now has to come in to get 1 out in the 6th inning. Now, he walked a couple of guys. He jacked up his own pitch count. Had he not done that, he might have been able to start the 7th, but he wasn't. He was not able to start the 7th. So now Castillo's been overextended. Ferrer's thrown twice in a row. He struggled, although did what he was supposed to do on Sunday, and now he's out of the game. So now what happens? The Mariners could have gone to, they're up 4-1 at this point, or maybe it was 3-1 at this point. I think it was 3-1 at this point. It could have gone to Spire, could have gone to Brash, whatever, but they end up going to Cooper Criswell. Why? Because they're trying to conserve bullpen arms, right? They don't want to throw Brash back-to-back. Maybe they don't want to throw Spire back-to-back because they've now thrown Ferrer back-to-back. So Criswell starts, I think it was 4-1 at this point, actually, by the way, in the 7th. So Criswell starts the 7th, gives up 2 runs before he gets an out. Doesn't get an out. So now you've burned Criswell. Now Spire's got to come in the 7th. Now he's thrown 2 days in a row. Now Bizzardo throws the 8th, and then obviously Munoz has the meltdown in the 9th, and the Mariners lose the game. And I told you one of my big fears was going all in on a game with the bullpen, being aggressive with the bullpen and losing. And that is exactly what happened to the Mariners on Sunday. They used Ferrer, they used Spire back-to-back days. They used Munoz, they used Bizzardo, and they lost. So now, what does that set up? That sets us up to Monday. You already have a short bullpen, 7 guys. Now you go into a series with the Orioles where Ferrer has pitched back-to-back days. By the way, he warmed up on Monday, so now he's thrown 3 consecutive days, but he pitches back-to-back days, Saturday and Sunday. I imagine you would prefer him to be down on Monday. Spire, coming off the injured list, has thrown 2 days in a row. He's clearly down on Monday. You have Munoz, who you might have had available, but you might not have wanted to go to, just because. So really, you're operating at a massive deficit going into Monday's game, because you have Spire, who's clearly down. You have Munoz, who you might want down. You have Ferrer, who you probably want down, and you're a man short anyways. That leaves you with, 3 bullpen arms you feel comfortable with? Bizzardo, Criswell, and Hoppy? That's a problem. Now we go into Tuesday, and let's look at the situation. Andres Munoz has now thrown 2 consecutive games. He's going to be down, I'm sure. Ferrer threw in 2 straight games and warmed up again on Monday. I imagine they would like to not have him. Criswell has thrown in back-to-back games. I imagine they would like to not use him. Brash hasn't thrown a back-to-back, I don't believe, since coming off the injured list, and he looked not particularly good on Monday. So I think you'd like to have him down. Bizzardo has now thrown back-to-back days. You'd probably like to have him down. So what does this leave the Seattle Mariners on Tuesday? Logan Gilbert, a starter that routinely runs high pitch counts and tends to give you 5 or 5 plus, at least, that's a regular occurrence for him. So you have Logan Gilbert, who I think we're all happy if he gives 6. But then what? Comfortably Spire and Alex Hoppy, and that's it. Because again, Munoz has thrown 2 days in a row. Bizzardo's thrown 2 days in a row. So is Criswell. And now Ferrer's thrown 2 days plus warmed up. I think you'd like to stay away from him if you could. The short bullpen breeds all of this. The 6-man rotation breeds all of this. And as I've told you, I understand why they're doing this. They want to keep Castillo and Miller stretched out. They want to protect themselves if someone gets injured. Maybe if somebody calls for Castillo in a trade, they want him to be in a position where he's a starter. I get all of it. Whatever permutation of this plan you're curious about, I get why they're doing it. But it comes with a real domino effect, and it comes with a real ripple effect, and we are seeing this. So what are we going to see on Tuesday? In a perfect world, I think Logan Gilbert gives you an efficient 7 innings, and things set up nicely, and you're up comfortably, and Alex Hoppy can throw the final 2. Like, that would be a perfect world. But you and I know that the world's not usually perfect. So is Jose Ferrer going to throw 4 days in a row, right? Pitch 3 and warm up the 4th? Is Bizzardo going to throw 3 days in a row? Are you going to see Alex Hoppy in a situation that maybe he's not really prepared for? Are you going to see Andres Munoz 3 days in a row and flirt with him pitching tired and therefore struggling and affecting his confidence after maybe he just got it back? These are real conversations that Dan Wilson's going to have with Pete Woodworth and Manny Acta et al. in that dugout and in that clubhouse and in that coach's room. But, I mean, a lot of these scenarios are not advantageous to the Mariners. Now, they won on Monday, and it's hugely important that they did. But they are at a deficit on Tuesday. They need Logan Gilbert to give them 7 innings, at least 6. But this cannot be a 4 2/3 98 pitch special. They are going to need efficiency. They're going to need him to eat innings, and they're going to need the offense to provide a lead so that hopefully you can get Alex Hoppy into the game and take at least an inning away from the bullpen on terms of the leverage guys and the guys who have been overworked. Now, a lot of you think that I am the Dan Wilson apologist. A lot of you believe that I never give Dan Wilson any grief. A lot of you think that I never question Dan Wilson. I have a question for Dan Wilson, and it's coming right after these words.
Crouch, I travel all the time, and I'm always looking for possible tickets to go see events, concerts, MLB games. When I do, I always find SeatGeek.
Yeah, I'm not traveling, so pretty much I'm looking for the games all in my area. I'm going to look for an Orioles game. I'm going to look for the Phillies game, the Mets game, the Yankees game. But you know what else is coming up? The All-Star game. SeatGeek's got me.
Hey, you're going to need them tickets to the All-Star game. It's going to be crazy. Hey, they have over 35 million downloads for a reason. It's because they have everything you need. Green dots, red dots. You pick your seat, see the scene from your seat. It's the best app going for tickets. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use code Territory10 for 10% off your next set of MLB tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any MLB tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek.
All right, this is going to be somewhat of a watershed moment, I think, for some of you on this show. Me having a constructive criticizing moment for Dan Wilson. And it's true. I like to point out the other side of the Dan Wilson discourse a lot. But there is something that Dan Wilson is going to have to do moving forward. He's going to have to start trusting the 8th spot in the bullpen. Part of what makes Dan Wilson, I think, so well liked in that clubhouse is that he trusts his guys. He trusts his veterans. He's not going to discard you just because you're struggling, right? He trusts the back of Mitch Garver's baseball card. He trusts the back of Rob Refsnyder's baseball card. And while maybe that frustrates you, the fan at home watching, it endears him, I think, to that clubhouse. It is clear that he trusts veterans and that young players have to earn his trust. That is very, very clear to me. Given the situation the team is in, he's going to have to start trusting the 8th spot in his bullpen. Like, this team is already down one reliever. They can't afford to basically be down 2. And I think it's evident that he does not want to go to Alex Hoppe unless he absolutely has to, or the game is completely out of hand. And whether it's Alex Hoppe, Robinson Ortiz, Domingo Gonzalez, or anybody else that we have seen in that 8th spot, Dan Wilson's going to have to start going to that person. Because that is the only other thing that can be done outside of good starting pitching to save the rest of the bullpen. I went through and looked, and I hope I have all this tabulated right. Alex Hoppe has thrown in 13 games. 10 of them have been losses, and 6 of them, I believe, have been losses by 3 runs or more. So he is the blowout guy. He is the we're getting blown out guy. At least that is the preferred role for him. He's pitched in a 2-0 loss. He's pitched in an extra inning game in Houston. He has pitched in some close games. But very clearly, Dan Wilson does not want to throw him in those situations if he can avoid it. He's going to have to start, at least in this period where you're down a guy and you have 10 games in 10 days, he's going to have to start to develop some trust for whoever's in that 8th spot. When they were up 4-1 in the 7th on Sunday, maybe that's a spot for Hoppe and not Chris Well. I don't think that necessarily matters, but maybe Hoppe gets an inning in the Monday game and Chris Well doesn't have to go back-to-back so that Chris Well is available on Tuesday. Those are the situations where I think Alex Hoppe has to be able to get an opportunity. And it's not just him. It's whoever is in that 8th spot in the bullpen. I think that the Mariners and the Dan Wilson have to start going to that person to alleviate some of the stress on what is already a very thin bullpen. All right, let's move on here. Let's talk about the injuries for a second. I want to move to Munoz next, but let's talk about the injuries for a second. We know Cal Raleigh is out. We know he's starting to rehab. Hopefully he'll be back next week. Brendan Donovan is out. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see him before July 1st, although that's not official. We know that J.P. Crawford is on the injured list, and we had Colt Emerson scratched on Monday, even though we believe that he is okay. But the injury situation as it is now, this is why you have to bank wins in April and May. When people get bothered by the team choking away a game in April or May, This is why. Because when you punt games early that you should win, you're likely to regret it later in the year when you are beat up and just trying to hold it together. The Mariners are 35-32, and I don't really like to do revisionist history. But I'm going to give you 3 games, right? Just 3. Let's assume that the Mariners win or should win that game in San Diego on April 15th when they blew the 5-run lead in the 9th inning, right? Let's assume that they should win that game. Let's assume they should win Sunday's game that they led the Tigers 4-1 in the 7th. And then pick one of the game where Logan Gilbert went 7 beautiful innings against the White Sox and they lost 2-1, or where Emerson Hancock, struck out 14 against the Royals and they lost. So let's assume they should have won the Padres game, the Tigers game, and one of those 2 pitching performances. If they win those 3, they're 38-29 instead of 35-32. Again, I don't really like to do revisionist history. I don't believe that things always play out the same way if you change one variable. But if they're 38-29, now we're talking about a team that can absorb some losses, that can absorb some injuries, can absorb a 3-game losing streak or a stretch where you lose, 5 out of 8. This team at 35-32 doesn't really feel like they can absorb that. It feels like a house of cards situation. So when people roll their eyes at me or at you or anybody else and say, oh no, Brady, it's early, you're right. It is early. But unless you plan on staying healthy for the entirety of the year and always being at your best moving forward, eventually you're going to run into a situation where it is tough for you to win games, and you're going to wish you had the cushion of the early games on your side. Those losses are big deals, and those losses do hurt. And while I no longer necessarily get as mad about them in the moment, I can step back and say, damn, if this team was 38-29 instead of 35-32, we're not sweating out J.P. Crawford's absence or Brendan Donovan's absence quite as much as we are. And the fact is that we are. This team is down 3 of its best offensive players right now, 1/3 of its starting lineup. It's also, at least in Monday's game, down one of its probably best 6 offensive players today in Colt Emerson. Now, they came back and won, and it's a great sign of resilience that they won on Monday, and it was a huge win. It was very important. But there's going to come a time in the year when you are searching for it and you are beat up, and it's going to be hard to win, and you're going to wish you had those games in your back pocket. And unfortunately, right now, the Mariners don't. They don't feel like they can absorb a lot of losses, both in the standings and on the roster, because they didn't do the job they should have done earlier in the season. All right, let's talk about Andres Munoz. Again, Ryon Healy is going to be with us here, the end of our conversation from Friday. Okay, he's going to be with us at the end of the show. That's going to how we're going to end it. But let's talk about Andres Munoz. I'll be honest. I spent all of Monday before the game thinking about this conversation, and I was ready to have the conversation about Andres Munoz's role as closer. Does he need to be replaced? Does he need to be put into lower leverage? Does he need this, that? I was ready for that conversation all day Monday. But when Andres Munoz got the job done on Monday against the Orioles, I think the conversation has shifted again a little bit, and I think he really did show us something on Monday. I feel the same way about Andres Munoz today as I did a month and a half ago, as I did 8 months ago. Andres Munoz's stuff is not really the problem here. The problem for Andres Munoz, the question for Andres Munoz, is his confidence. I know this because I've been a pitcher. I've been a pitcher who's in my own head. I've lived it, and it doesn't matter whether you are an all-star pitcher or a D3 pitcher like I was. The human brain is a powerful thing, and the human brain can put you in places on the mound that are not comfortable and that you don't want to be in. The human brain can do that to you. That is why there is such a huge investment in sports psychology and in mental conditioning, because people are realizing the human brain can do things like this to you. If you look at Andres Munoz's Baseball Savant page, it is littered in red. Red is good. His strikeout rate, his fastball velocity, his chase rate, his whiff rate, they are all in the 96th percentile or above, meaning that he is in the top 96% of all pitchers in the league in those categories. Fastball velocity, strikeout rate, whiff rate, chase rate. He is elite at many, many things. The velocity is better than it's been over the last couple of years, or at least over the last year. The fastball velocity is a little bit better. The slider velocity is a little bit better. Andres Munoz is harder to hit today than he was last season when he was an all-star. The stuff is that good. This is not a stuff issue. This is a confidence issue and a mindset issue. This is a, I am hoping to get through it, rather than a, I will get through it. A lot of people have asked me, Brady, what do you think about Andres Munoz's mechanics? What do you think about him falling off the mound? This is not a mechanical issue because Andres Munoz's mechanics are bad, at least to me. This is a mechanical issue as a result of nerves and anxiousness. Let me give an analogy. Have you ever been in a situation where you're a little nervous and you're running and you feel like you're running so fast that you end up tripping over yourself, right? You have sped up your body to the point where you lose your balance. I think a lot of us can probably relate to that at one point or another, right? You're playing basketball on the pickup court. You get going so fast. Guy comes near you, makes you a little nervous. All of a sudden, you speed up, right? We hear this all the time. The game is speeding up on them. Okay, the game is getting a little too quick for them. That, I believe, is what is happening to Andres Munoz. I believe that this is the progression. Andres Munoz walks out to the mound. He knows that he has had some struggles this year. He is hoping to get through it. When you are hoping, then what happens? You are not confident. You're probably a little bit afraid to throw the ball in the strike zone. But even beyond that, the game speeds up on you. Your mechanics get squirrely. Your arm doesn't catch up to the rest of your body. And this is where we see Andres Munoz doing one of two things. Either he's way behind the baseball and the fastball is sailing up and in, or the slider is way backing up on him. So now he's down in the count 1-0. So now he says, all right, I'm not going to do that again. So he overcompensates, and now the ball's thrown into the left-handed batter's box. Like, this is how it is. And now it's 2-0, and the thoughts are, don't walk the guy. I've walked the guy before, and bad things happen when I walk the guy. So what happens? Then you walk the guy. And now you're in a position where the runner is on base, and now, all right, well, the runner's on base, and what, they bunt him over? What if I throw a wild pitch? Like, this is how negative self-talk happens. Again, I know it because I've lived it. I wanted to be, here we go, a Glory Days Brady story. I wanted to be good so bad that it ate me up. I was so nervous whenever I took them. Look, I went to a huge high school. I went to one of the biggest high schools in New York State. I had 3,500 kids in my high school. My high school was bigger than the Division I college down the road from my high school. So if you made a team, you were good. Okay? Myself included. But if you made a team, you were good. But as a result, everybody on the team was good. So anybody who screwed up, it was very easy to replace you because everybody on the roster was good. So I went out there all of high school. I spent my entire high school career thinking, don't make a mistake. Why? Because if you do, you're going to get pulled. And every time I was successful, it was just a sense of relief that I had not failed. And every time I failed, it was a result of the game speeding up on me and the negative self-talk that comes with that. Don't walk a guy. Don't get behind in the count. Don't hang the curveball. And when you start talking to yourself like that, that is when those things happen. Now, to my credit, I was able to still battle through that stuff and have a high school career, but I pitched 150 innings in college in my career. I probably pitched 30 innings on the varsity team in high school. I got better as I went to college. Now, I still wasn't over it. I had plenty of outings in college where I was talking to myself, don't do this, don't do that, don't get behind in the count, don't walk the guy, you cannot live that way on the mound. Now, I joke to people about being much better now in the men's league than I was then. Part of it is because in 2012, I was coaching Division III baseball, and I met Brian Kane, who was a sports psychologist, still is a sports psychologist, one of the best in the world. And I met him, and I listened to him talk for 1 hour. And the things he said completely changed my life. Now, yes, I know that it's easier to pitch in the men's league when when guys aren't practicing and guys aren't playing all the time, the competition's not as good and guys are rusty. That's all true. It's absolutely true. But I'm rusty not playing all the time also. Why am I so much better now? Because mentally I am so much more developed than I was as a simple result of that 1 hour conversation with the mental conditioning coach in 2012. It's really that simple for me. It completely changed my life. And I thought to myself, if I had known that when I was playing 3 years ago, I would have been a much different pitcher. But I spent too much time thinking, don't do this, and being worried about it. And that is what I see in Andres Munoz. He has great stuff. Great stuff. The numbers back that up. That's not me just trying to stunt for him. The numbers are great. The fastball is 98 to 100. The slider is great. The chase rate is great. The whiff rate is great. It's all there on paper. What's not there is the confidence to know that he can do it. So now the question is, how do the Mariners handle it? Well, they're in a tough spot here. I believe Andres Munoz could benefit from some lower leverage situations. I do. But who do you trust more than him right now to take the ninth inning? Matt Brash, we've seen put guys on each of his last couple of appearances. I mean, he's hit a batter, I believe, in each of his last 2 appearances, or at least 2 of his last 3. We saw what happened on Monday night that he was lucky to get out of. Matt Brash had, coming into Monday's game, he had 7 walks and or hit by pitches in 16 innings, meaning he was good for a free runner 1 out of every 2 innings, and he gave multiple of those on Monday as well. He's no sure thing at the moment. Edward Bizardo has been far from locked down. The traffic has gotten increased on him as well. If you put Jose Ferrer in the closer's spot, then you're losing a high-leverage lefty, and we see how valuable having a high-leverage lefty along with Gabe Spire is. There are no good answers here. So I believe that Andres Munoz would benefit from some lower leverage situations, from coming into the 7th when they're down 3-1, or coming into the 7th when they're up 4-1, and you're trying to pivot it. I believe he absolutely would benefit from that. But the minute you start changing his role or changing the other roles around him, you're going to be left with questions somewhere. So because Andres Munoz got through it on Monday, I tend to believe give him another chance or give him more chances as the closer. I'm not married to that idea. Again, I think he could use some low leverage situations. The one thing a lot of you have said, and I went through and looked at the numbers on this, Andres Munoz, when there is rust involved, does tend to struggle. Right? He is a guy, I think, that does need to pitch, and it's a fine line. You need to pitch to get work in, but you don't want to pitch so much that you're now, unavailable or tired or we're worried about injury. I don't think Andres Munoz can afford to go 5 days between outings anymore, or 4 days between outings. I think the Mariners are going to have to find a way to get him into some games, and whether that means that the Mariners are up 10-1 or down 10-1, if they need to get him in, I think they need to get him in. And if that means that they end up burning him in a spot where they didn't need him, they don't have him later where they wish they did, then that might happen every once in a while. But I think letting him sit for 5 days and stew and wonder over what's going to happen and then now the rust is there, and it leads to the mental issues or the lack of mental clarity. I think that's just a soup that is, or a recipe for a not very good tasting soup. Andres Munoz's stuff is there. I don't believe his mechanics are bad because his mechanics are bad. I believe when his mechanics get haywire, it's because he's getting anxious and he's getting sped up. And when you have 5 days and your arm feels electric and your mind is also racing and nothing syncs up because you're a little rusty, that's a bad recipe. So I think they need to get Andres Munoz some work in. And if that means, again, that they burn him and they have to have Ferrer be the closer on another day, then so be it. But I think Andres Munoz showed me his primary role should still be closer on this team, at least for now. Again, some lower leverage situations I think would do him wonders. And if we're at the point where he hasn't pitched for 3 days and they feel like they need to get him in and they're down 7-1, then so be it. That can be the lower leverage situation. But I don't think there are any other home run options right now as the closer. My gut told me yesterday that I would have had Ferrer handle most of the closing opportunities for a bit. After what Andres Munoz did on Monday, I'm ready to pull back on that and say he deserves it still, but he's got to get some work in even in non-save situations if he hasn't pitched in a while, because he's got to get that confidence built up. It is a hard way to live when you are constantly telling yourself no, 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 as opposed to yes, yes, yes. And that is my assumption as to how I think Andres Munoz has felt far too often this year. All right. On Friday's show, we had Ryon Healy on. It was the first time we've ever spoken to Ryon Healy, former Mariners infielder and current Mariners broadcaster. The first 18 minutes of that interview were awesome. You can go find them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube. We're going to play part 2 now, and we're going to jump right into it. Let's kind of move to part 2 and switch off the Mariners day-to-day and kind of get big picture with your career. What have you learned, now that you're in the media, what have you learned about this job or what we do or what it takes that maybe you didn't know when you were playing?
The media have a job to do, and I don't think that job is understood from the player's perspective, which can sometimes in turn look like it's not respected by the players. I also think that there's a tone that media can use that can cast judgment on the players without understanding what the players are going through. But is it the media's job to understand what the players are going through? I'm not certain. I'm still learning. I think I have a leg up because I've been a player and I understand what these guys are feeling in the good and bad moments. But I know respecting what the other person's job is for that given day is really important. And I see a lot of that when I'm in Seattle, of just how people communicate with one another, from media to players, the players to media, coaches and such. There's great respect that's surrounding that organization in general.
I feel. Let me ask a follow up to that. I feel like you're in a really good spot, and I don't know if I'm right on this, so I want your opinion. I feel like you're in a really good spot in that you are close enough to your playing career ending that you're very much in the know and kind of in that world still, but you're not so close to it that you are in a position to have to pass judgment on a lot of former teammates or a lot of former friends, which is where I think former players get uncomfortable. Am I right in that you're kind of in this sweet spot, or am I off on that?
No, I'm still close enough to the playing where I understand it well enough, while their game has also evolved a ton. I tend to, oddly enough, gravitate more towards the media because that's a side that I don't understand as well. And I also know from the player's perspective, I didn't hang out with media throughout the course of the day. Like, that wasn't the regular conversation that I wanted to have, because it was normally questions that were being asked about myself or the team that I really didn't want to think about.
Yeah.
So now, being on the media side, I'm forced to think about things from different perspectives. Whereas a player, I have one job and one job only. And I'm going to go prepare myself for that. And anything that you ask me outside of that job is a distraction to me doing my job well. Whereas now I'm more interested in the bunch of moving parts. I'm interested to hear what fans are thinking and feeling. I'm interested to hear the media's perspective on what they might, be seeing with this type of play or roster decision or game decision. I'm interested in how all those things function. But I'm still learning a ton about the media side and how can I be critical but also respectful, because I know how hard it is to succeed and also fail at the major leagues. And I never want to lose that tone. Like, I never want to become tone deaf to that and be disrespectful to the players.
When fans are playing armchair general manager, they think it's easy. Oh, J.P. Crawford can slide over to third, no problem. Oh, Brendan Donovan can play a different position every day, no problem. You floated between first and third at times in your career. How difficult is it to either A, learn a new position, or B, rotate between them?
I'll tell you one of my pregame routines. I was always more stressed when I was playing third than if I was playing first. I felt like I could play first blindfolded, but third base, it took every ounce of me. Yeah. And then once I knew what position I was playing, I'd look at the opposing lineup. If I'm playing first base, how many left-handed hitters are up there? If there's 7, lefties, I'm like, I'm going to be busy today. Let's be locked in. Let's make sure we're pre-pitching, make sure I know the plays, the opportunities. If I'm playing third base and there's 8 righties in the lineup, I'm like, I'm going to be busy today.
Yeah.
There's a couple of lefties in there. Okay, yeah, I'll shift over. I have some different responsibilities, but the stress that comes with different positions is real. It's not a fair comp from myself to J.P. Crawford, though, who has been a Gold Glove shortstop in the major leagues. I think defense is a lot easier for him than it ever was for me. I remember talking with Matt Chapman. We were coming up together. He's like, dude, if I just had the same confidence in the batter's box that I have on defense, he goes, I would be an all-star every year. So guys can be more confident on either side of the baseball. And to give you a comp for that, think about a guy like Bo Bichette, who has been a good big league defender at shortstop for his entire career, signed a big contract to move positions in a big market. And I think that stress and that, pressure that comes with that transition of the game looking completely different from third base for shortstop was a lot for him to handle. And then I think it affects your offense a little bit more than you want to lead on. That's at least what I saw this weekend. And then by the last game of the series, he had 3 or 4 hits. And you're like, oh, there's Bo Bichette. He's not gone. He's just been underwater and a lot on his plate.
Given how it's played out since then, I think we could all confidently say the Mariners made the right decision after 2018 to step back and reimagine the roster. But you were on that 2018 team that got close. You were on the 2019 team that got hot at the beginning and then really struggled through the course of the year. Did that 2018 season feel like you were at the end of a window or at the end of, a last shot with this group? Did it feel that way to you as a player at the time?
No, not necessarily. I think a lot of us in the clubhouse in 2018 felt like we were a piece or two away at the trade deadline. And when we didn't get that piece or two that we thought we would get, we were all left questioning, like, why? Why did we not go get a starting pitcher to bolster that rotation? Why did we go get outfielders to, create more depth out there and more platoons when that's not what we really needed? Or another bullpen arm when we thought we had some good arms. Like, we needed starting pitching. We had a lot of guys that were hurt. So I think we felt like we were still so close. And then obviously when the offseason started and the conversation started to circulate, you went, oh no, that might have been our last game, ever playing together as a group. And then you saw the destruction process start. I think when you're in it, like, there's just a lot of emotions and frustration. Right. And then when you see what the end product is now, you have a lot of respect for the vision that it takes from a front office to say, hey, we're going to break this thing down entirely with the goal of rebuilding it to what we think it could be, and not always knowing how that journey was going to go. Think about how many great rookies have come up for the Mariners. A guy like Kyle Lewis, who won a Rookie of the Year, I believe, right? Yes. In 2020. Mm-hmm. The first baseman as well.
Evan White, Gold Glover.
Evan White, man, Gold Glover, signed the extension. And like, there's so many bodies that came through that they thought would be that anchor, but weren't. But they've never been afraid, the Mariners front office, they've never been afraid to pivot and to make decisions. And they've also always invested in development. And I think that's the piece that nobody saw at that time, was how much time, money, and energy was going into the drafting and developing of these players. Pitchers primarily at first, and obviously they've gotten so much better on the offensive side. When you see the body of work now, it's hard to question anything that they've done, even though when you were in it, you were probably questioning everything.
I will get you out of here on this. I've been a Mariners fan for 30 years. When I talk to people around the 90s Mariners, I ask every one of them for a Griffey story. When I talk to people around the early 2000s Mariners, I ask every one of them about an Ichiro story. The guy I don't get to ask about a lot is Kyle Seager, who I think is one of the more unheralded Mariners of certainly the last 15 years, but probably the entire 2000s. He's going to be on the top 50 Mariners team when it comes out in August. You played with him. We never hear from him anymore, but we also never hear anything bad about him. I'm curious just kind of your thoughts on Seager, a guy, frankly, that I wish I got to know a little better.
Talk about just a consistent big leaguer that knew what his job was and did it really well year in and year out. Like the contract that he signed, I think, was probably one of the most even investments from both sides of the equation. One of the things about Kyle I was so disappointed about is he didn't get to be a part of the playoff teams.
Right.
Like he put so much into that organization. And there's a lot of stories that I won't share. One of my favorite that I talked about this weekend, though, with a few people was they have ice cream machines all over the stadium. There's one in the press box. There's one in the visiting clubhouse and the home clubhouse. And Kyle would always bring his son in on the games that we would win in that 2018, 2019 season. And his son was allowed to get an ice cream cone on the days that we won. So my favorite was I would come out, whatever, go take an ice bath or something, and come back, and his son was sitting in his chair, and we had a lockers really close to each other. He'd sit in his chair just taking down some ice cream. I was like, man, imagine being 7, 8 years old, hanging out in a big league locker room, just eating a cup of ice cream post game, just watch your dad win a major league game. Like it was cool how he brought his family along in the journey and included them in it. And that was one of my favorites.
13-2, I think the 2019 team started. So that's a lot of ice cream in the first 2.5 weeks of the season, no doubt. That was a fun first month there. I never have ice cream. The only time I have it is when I go to press boxes. So I was at the first 5 games of the season. I had ice cream every single day. I haven't had ice cream more than one time since then. But it's an addiction when I'm there. So, Ryan, man, much appreciated. A good chance for us to have a first conversation here on this show. The fans are loving you. I'm enjoying listening to you when I'm not blacked out from those broadcasts. So we appreciate what you're doing on the media side. 5 years a big leaguer, 2 of those years with the Mariners, 24 home runs in 2018 as well. A fun 2018 season that was. Ryan, man, much appreciated. Be well. We'll look forward to hearing from you again on another broadcast here down the road, and we'll get you on again sometime.
I appreciate you having me on. I look forward to the next opportunity when I'm not half-brained from this. So go Mariners and keep enjoying it.
All right, that was Ryon Healy, Mariners broadcaster currently and former Mariners infielder. We love talking to him. We are definitely going to get Ryan on again. The Mariners are 35-32. You can follow us always, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also check us out at marinersroundtable.com. We'll have Buster Olney of ESPN on Thursday's episode as always. I'll be back at it again on Friday. We'll have an update at that point on Cal Raleigh and his rehab assignment as it continues through Tacoma. And I'll be on the road very early Friday morning, like 3 a.m. Eastern time, to get to Washington for Mariners Nationals over the weekend. Mariners win against the Orioles. It was certainly heart-stopping at times, but a win is a win. 35-32, first place. I'll see you on Thursday with Buster Olney. And as always, go M's.